Hello guys, once again it's Matt, and today we have another video. Thank you all the members, all the patrons. Make sure to subscribe and let's get into it, guys. And continuing the type of video that I was doing during this week, we are going to talk a little bit about what are the variants, or more specifically, what are the models or the specific aircraft that are missing from the game, you know, in a certain vehicle. So, for example, we are going to talk about the F14. We did one of these for the 29, the MiG. We did one of these for the F16 as well. And I really wanted to talk about the F14 because it's an aircraft that a lot of people think that, well, that's it. We are kind of done. And even if you consider the D variant that I am going to talk about it, a lot of people just forget about how many F14s actually existed, right? But first things first, we need to kind of draw a line a little bit. Why? Because Gaijin doesn't add every single variant of, or every single block of an aircraft, or every single model, whatever you want to call it, or whatever the manufacturers of the aircraft actually call the different like models of it, right? They don't add every single one of them, which means that of course there are going to be jumps, but I gotta be honest, there aren't that many F-14s anyway to be added, but there are some interesting ones. The first one is actually an aircraft that is already in the game, the F-14A. If you know, the F-14A is the first F-14 that was added, and it is using the AIM-7F and the AIM-9H. It is basically using kind of a mid to late 70s loadout that an F-14A would use before the AIM-9L even, right? And the AIM-9 and the AIM-7M from the 80s, or even the 9M from the 80s as well, right? So the first thing would be to add a later model. Of course, there are many blocks of F-14s. The F-14 was produced for a long time, and in a certain, like, a semi-huge kind of number, right? So having a late model of the F-14A would mean that it would have the same TF-30s, maybe a little bit of an upgrade to it, something like that. I was thinking about something like a block. I don't know if it's called a blocked, but the F-14A-135, I think it is one of the last ones. I'm pretty sure. I have to check, but still one of the later models from the early mid 80s. You know, that one would have the TCS, which is the camera system that we have in the F-14B, but it would remain using the TF-30, as I was saying. The radar is, of course, the same, the AWG-9. The main difference would be that it has a different engine to the F-14B, but having the possibility of using the TCS and the weapon systems that the F-14B would use. So it would use the AIM-54C, if I'm not mistaken, the AIM-7M, of course, and of course the AIM-9L, or even the AIM-9M if they decided to add. It would be kind of a fold together with the F-14A early that we have in game. It's not a big model, but I think it would be very interesting to see, and it would fill it up a little bit of the gap between the F-14A and B that we have right now. It would make sense. And of course, with a fold, it would mean that you would basically have a B F-14 without the engines, with a half price kind of on it. You know, so it would be basically half the RP, the research points, and half the, I think half the Silver Lions as well, right? So that would be the main thing. Of course, the second one, of course, there are many models between these two, the earlys and late A's, for example, but another A that I wanted to talk a little bit about, just a little bit, would be an Iranian F-14. Of course, Iran uses the F-14A. It actually has a very early model of the F-14A, very similar to what we have with the F-14 in the game, but it would be different, and I already did a whole video about it, so that's why I'm not gonna dive too much into it, but it would be basically a premium, an event vehicle, something like that for the US, of course, with some cool different skins, you know, and different weaponry. So it would use, for example, The older missiles, like the main initial missiles, would be the AIM-7Es, right? And the AIM-9H, if I'm not mistaken, or G. I have to check. There are conflicting like sources about this, but the main thing would be their own like missiles. Of course, they could even use something that they tested, like the R-27 or even the Hawk missile, but they have a specific missile designed to, to the F-14 that they have. Of course, they lost a lot of, contact, and they're not really able to buy anything from the US anymore, obviously. So they have the Fakor 90, for example, which is basically their own version of a Phoenix missile. So it could be a little bit interesting to see something like that. And of course, finally, the last one, and I think the most interesting one, the F-14D, the Super Tomcat, the aircraft that a lot of people love and would really want in the game. First things first, guys. Although the F-14D is quite a huge upgrade to the B, remember that on performance they are pretty much the same. So if you want to have an idea of what an F-14D would be like, it would be an F-14B with just an overall modernization on it, especially on the radar. So the radar that they use is much improved radar, like far miles away from the original AWG-9, being the APG-71. It was a radar that was used with the latest technology that they used in the latest models of the Strike Eagle at that time and stuff. So it was a very modern radar. The radar would be really good. And the AWG-9 is already an amazing radar, so you can say that the APG-71 would be even more amazing, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the radars were slightly upgraded as well. I know they weren't. It's the same G400, right? Forget about what I said there. But in general, it would have better, airborne self-protection systems, information distribution systems, better ejection seats, an IRST. So imagine an F-14 with an IRST would be amazing. And of course, I mean, if you could use it, Gaijin normally adds it, and that's where I think the F-14 would really shine if Gaijin wants to bend history a little bit. So if you don't know, the AIM-120 was actually tested on the F-14D. So that would be probably one of the main things if Gaijin wants to add the AIM-RAM to an F-14, right? Of course, they could choose not to because it never saw service, but I can see a lot of people wanting this, and it would be interesting to see anyway. But I don't know if they are going. I don't know even if I would like to see that or not. I'm just pointing that it could be a thing, yeah, that would be it. An amazing radar, even better systems overall in the aircraft, better weaponry, of course, better missiles. I mean, later models of the AIM-9M, for example, standard stuff for modernizations. And of course, together with that, maybe if they want to, they could in theory add the AIM-120, which would be pretty interesting as well. So these are the three F-14s that I think are still able to be added to the game. They're not really that different from what we have in the game, apart from the D variant, but they're all very cool. Especially the late A, I would really like to see those, because remember, the A model is the main model of the F-14, right? It's the aircraft that was most produced in the TOMCAT's kind of lineup, right? So it would be the coolest one for me, because it would be the old performance, and I really like bridging the gap between the third and the fourth generation in performance, but having very modern 80s equipment. So that would be very cool. Let me know in the comments which of these three would you like to see more in the game, and I see you guys on the next one.